Welcome back to Creepy Kitty Creations. Sorry it's been a little while, but I'm really excited about today's video. Some of you might already be familiar with my possessed nun video, if you haven't, give it a wee watch. But today I wanted to do something inspired by the weeping statue legend, where a statue of Mary cries tears of blood. Let's get started. So I actually cut out the eyes and did all the magnetizing off camera because I had a bout of insomnia, so I was actually doing it at between 2:30 and 4 a.m. But I promise I'll film it next time now that I know what I'm doing. So today we'll be using a Frankie head, and I wanted to have brown hair, so I'm just going to paint the wig cap brown, so then if any of the yarn shows through it won't be noticeable. So it's just the same as usual. And there we go. For some reason it cracked and I don't know why, but I'm using this lovely yarn here. I think this might be my new favourite yarn. It just brushes out so pretty. So I made a bunch of those off camera and am gluing them onto the wig with fabric glue. I've been wanting to make this doll for quite a while actually, and just haven't found the time to do it, but I've been a very busy bee this past month, so I'm absolutely shattered trying to make the pattern, finalize the pattern for these nun dolls so that I can start selling some of them, which is very exciting. So I'm just pinning these in place because I want to go around the hair. She's having a fringe, and I find that the wefts don't really want to stay in place all that well, so pinning them tends to help with that. When she's done, she's looking a bit like Cousin It, so we'll want to flip that parting and clip it in place. So then I can go in with the second weft backwards and just sort of push that into place as close to that other parting part as possible. And it's going a bit crazy, maybe I used a few too many wefts, but we'll brush that out and cut her bangs, just roughly. I'll trim them up a little bit. Whoa, that's poofy. And we'll trim them up a little bit with some scissors. And that's looking like pretty crazy hair. So we're going to go over it with some Glad wrap and a rubber band. And I'm just going to actually leave that for a few days to get it to lay flat. And now with her face up. So I've got a story for you guys today. A short story I wrote called The Call. Turn the lights down. I've heard voices since I was a small child, the same few words on a loop.
Help!
My parents thought I was insane. They spent thousands of dollars they didn't have on psychologists, therapists, and child behaviourists. At least the priest was free, and he believed me, told me it was God's voice, and managed to interpret what he was trying to tell me, the words I always heard but never understood.
Saint Julietta's.
From now on, your name will be Sister Josephine, Sister Augusta said. The Gothic passageways of the St. Julietta Abbey were maze-like, tall and imposing. Only the open cloisters and courtyards seemed warm and inviting. This section is strictly off-limits. The sisters had cordoned off the area with old rope. I realised I'd fallen behind and ran to Sister Augusta's side. This is the old wing, predating the rest of St. Julietta Abbey by 2 decades. Parts of the ceiling crumbled to the floor, and not always in small pieces. It should be demolished. Entry will result in your immediate expulsion. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Here are the sleeping quarters. This is your bed. She gestured to a single bed in the centre of the far wall, which was covered in hairline cracks and peeling paint. Concerning sheens suggested deep-set moisture damage. There would be no getting warm, especially with only a single blanket garnishing the steel-framed bed. Thank you, sister. After hovering around some of the other beds, I found a pocket of cold air which surrounded only my bed. Just my luck. My eyes snapped open, the sound of dripping water waking me from a deep sleep. I tried to think of it as white noise, the peaceful trickling of a waterfall, and closed my eyes and went back to sleep. and echoing throughout the halls stilled my heart for an unsettling moment, long enough for the sound to sink in. Children crying. The cries grew louder and more hysterical, some worsening into gut-wrenching screams. I opened my eyes and sat upright. Surely the others had woken too, only instead of the faces of my fellow nuns was the chalk-white face of a little boy inches from my nose. His eyes were sunken in, hollowed and dark, his hair and clothes slipping in what smelt like rancid water. I stared, unmoving, at the boy. I could see my breath in warm white puffs, the air suddenly cold. God's voice spoke to me once more, louder than I had ever heard it. The boy lunged at me, howling in my face and tearing out a fistful of my hair.
Help!
I don't remember screaming or crying. The lights flickered on, and all the nuns came running to me as I sobbed hysterically on my bed, which was soaked through. As I rocked back and forwards, I realised I was holding an old, soggy teddy bear in a death grip. Its remaining eye cracked down the middle. It looked like a leper with all its missing patches of fur. The nuns didn't believe me when I told them it wasn't mine. Sister Augusta's face contorted when I told her about the boy, but she dismissed it as nonsense, even after he tormented me every night for the next month. Dripping, children crying, throwing foul-smelling water all over me, screaming at me, leaving that blasted teddy on my pillow, on a ledge in the cloisters in the chapel. This time it was sitting at the border of the old wing. By the time I got close enough to pick it up, the raggedy bear slid backwards, as if moved by an invisible force past the barrier. It was taunting me.
Help!
I checked no one was watching before crawling under the barrier rope into the old wing. When I stretched my hand towards the bear, it flung backwards, dragged around the corner through the deteriorating archway. Maybe my parents had been right. Maybe I was the one who needed help. I held my cross to my chest and inhaled deeply, filling my heart with the Lord's strength. The bear sat in the middle of the next hallway, its head cocked to the side playfully. The cloister was partially open to another exterior courtyard that wasn't accessible from the new parts of the abbey, filling the hall with golden sunbeams accompanied by dancing dust motes. The bear didn't run away from me this time. I turned it around in my hands. It had been well loved. "Where do you keep coming from?" I asked, not expecting an answer. I saw a shadow out of the corner of my eye. Before I could react, the boy pushed me with such force I fell into the courtyard. I landed on something hard. Splinters worked their way into my hands as I tried to prop myself up, the boy staring at me with his black eyes. The wooden slats groaned under my weight before giving way. I fell with a mighty crash down a long pit, knocking the air out of me. A ring of light stared down at me. I'd fallen into an old well. The ground crunched as I stood. I couldn't tell my screams apart from the screaming of children resounding in my ears as I inspected the floor of the well. Hundreds of black, empty eyes stared at me from bare bone. Skeletons, some clothed in baby rompers and other in tiny dresses or shorts, littered the well. I couldn't breathe. I backed against the dripping wall of the well, crying. My eyes fell to the skeleton in front of me, a boy in wet shorts and emerald jumper, with a few wisps of hair sprouting from specks of decayed flesh. An old worn teddy bear with a broken eye lay grasped by what would have been the boy's hand. An inscription was embroidered on the bottom of the bear's foot. I just hadn't noticed. St. Julietta's Mother and Baby Home. So turn the lights back up, and that is that. I hope you enjoyed it. I was actually wanting some feedback from you guys, if you liked that as a short story or whether you think it could be better. developed into a novella. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I'd also like to know, because in the titles I was wanting to call videos that have wee stories as Storytime, and let me know if you guys like that idea about putting that in the title so you can tell straight away if it has a scary story to go with it. So I've done her face just as normal, using mainly pastels and going in with some white watercolor pencil, and this time I painted on the tears with red paint. I really wanted it really vibrant, and now I'm just going in with a black watercolor pencil to sketch on her eyeliner. I really enjoy doing these sorts of horror dolls, which I think is why I want to sell a few more of these nun dolls. I'll let you know when I've got some of them made and when they'll be up for purchase. So that's what I've been busy doing this month as well, is trying to get a few things done. Just going in with some black pastel, pan pastel, to give that nice dark vibe. Getting the right intensity of the pastels did take quite a while. It's just something to be really patient with and slowly build up with each layer of Mr. Super Clear. It's definitely worth persevering with. I'm going to do some body blushing as well, just like with the possessed nun, with using reds and blacks. And also adding the same sort of possessed veins, just like the possessed nun, although she's a bit different from the possessed nun. This one is inspired by the weeping statue miracle that people have said that they've seen, where the statue of the Virgin Mary has been crying tears of blood, which I just think is such a cool legend. I would love to see that. It would be amazing and horrifying at the same time. And even though she's not really a character in the story that I just read out, but being a nun, I also feel that it's quite relevant. And a lot in the old days, back in the 60s, quite a few mother and baby homes that were also churches or abbeys. It has been known in a few cases where children of unwed mothers, especially babies, would be killed and hidden. The mothers would be told that they'd failed to thrive, so they would have thought that their baby just died normally. I found out, I think it was somewhere in Ireland, they found a well full of bones. So the story was inspired by that, and I thought, well, if the Virgin Mary was ever going to cry tears of blood, it would be for children like that. I mean, it makes anyone want to cry, let alone someone who promotes love and goodwill. So that's what inspired this and the story. So I think they go quite well together, and why I have named this doll Julietta, after the abbey in the story. And I'm just going over her body and her face with blue and red watercolor pencil. The blue for the main veins, and then just adding bits of red, especially closer to where, just in a few areas of the vein, because if you look really closely at veins, they start out blue, but they also have some areas that are sort of a darker purplish colour, so adding red helped with that and sort of adding that intensity and realism. Going in with a few highlights with white and red watercolour pencils to add the lip wrinkles, and then just going in with a wet paintbrush and brown and tan watercolour to just get some really fine strokes for her eyebrows. And what I find important for dolls that have inset eyes is going kind of, it's like the doll equivalent of tight lining and going in and under the eye socket to make sure that there's no skin colour peeking out. Just going over her eyeliner with a wet paintbrush and just dabbing that on my black watercolour pencil. It makes it so much more intense. It makes all the difference, it really does. And just adding some highlights and some wee white dots as shines on her waterline, and just adding some to her lips, but they turned out a bit too intense, so I went over it again with some pastels to make those highlighted lip wrinkles a bit less bold. So checking in, making sure that it's all that's looking pretty good. And this is how it's looking with her wig. I'm really happy with this so far. I wasn't sure at first, but no, I'm happy with this. So now I'm just going back over her blood tears with paint because it got a little bit of black pan pastel over it, which I'm just going over her body again after doing another layer of Mr. Super Clear to make that a bit more intense, giving her some red nail polish to match her tears, and she's about done. I made the eyes off camera and I'm just coating them with some UV resin to make them really shiny. I just made them the same way as in my Possessed Nun video. I'm also going over her tears with UV resin because I want them to look a little bit more 3D than on the Possessed Nun. Just giving it a try, trying just new technique, and it's working really well. They're like properly 3D. They look like real tears. I'm definitely doing this again. And the lamp died, so I ended up having to get out my big nail UV lamp instead. And we'll just put that under the lamp. I'm going to gloss her lips the same way just to test it out. Worked really well. I'm so happy with how that came. I'm going to have to do this on all my dolls now. So now I'm applying a bit of Elmer's glue on the inside of her eyes, waiting a little bit for it to get tacky before adding on her eyelashes. Cute. And I do the same for the bottom lashes. Just add them piece by piece. And they are tiny. Like itty bitty. There we go. I think bottom lashes make a big difference. So that's with all of her eyelashes dried and the UV resin cured. So now we can put her eyes in. I love the magnetized hair. That's working so well. I'm definitely going to film it next time, I promise. Show you how I made them. So we're going to get the eyes, and 3, 2, 1. I wish it had been that quick in real life. In real life, her eyes took me 2 full days to get into her head, and a lot of blue tack. It was actually an absolute nightmare. I don't know why. So I made her outfit off camera because I was going back and forth finalizing the pattern. So sorry about that. But we'll give her shoes a wee paint. I quite like them with the purple, but it didn't quite match the look, so I'm just painting them black, and I'm actually going over the black that was already on the factory paint just so that it's all the same. And I like to give my dolls often, I like to give them red soles of their shoes. I just think it looks really cool, and especially for this one because it's going to tie in with her tears and just give that wee pop of colour. Otherwise it's an awful lot of black and white. And there they are. I also painted the bows red to tie those in nicely, and I'm going to coat them with UV resin as well because that worked really well actually for the succubus's shoes, and it's just going to protect that paint and make them super shiny and cute because I'm planning on selling this doll, so I really didn't want the paint to come off. Once that's coated, I keep them in the UV lamp. I think it was actually for a good 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure they were properly cured. And just as an added extra, I wanted to make her like some defiled holy water by putting some UV resin into this cute little jar that I found. Just squeezing that in. I don't really care too much about if there's bubbles because it will just look more like water, and maybe that it's boiling or that something mystical's going on. So I took some paint and just splooshed that in there, and it actually came out in really defined little globules. I'm really happy with how that came out. It really does look like blood defiled holy water. So I cured that in the lamp as well. And this is how it turned out. I also made her rosary off camera the same way as the possessed nun, except I did this on elastic, and I was not going to have what happened last time happen this time, so I'm actually dabbing a little bit of super glue onto the knot because for those of you who remember the other video, it snapped right after I finished making it, so that's not happening this time. And she's done, but wait, she needs a stand. So I'm just going to take this bit of, I think it's just normal cardboard, quite thick cardboard, and I've already cut these bits of foam into shapes to look like tiles, and I'm just gluing all those on individually with hot glue, my best friend. I haven't made a stand this way before, so this is actually really fun. I don't often work with foam. So the idea behind this is like the tiles or stone floor in churches. So I thought, how cool would it be to put a little cross in there as well as a tie-in for the story. And I also liked the idea of, because she's weeping tears of blood, I like the idea of maybe she's in like an abandoned church or a chapel that's been neglected. And I guess that would make a statue of Mary sad too as well. That's the kind of basis I went for the design of her stand. And that ties in with the story as well, I guess, because the area where the children were kept is from the old wing that was becoming derelict and falling apart. So now that those are all glued on, I'm going over it with some rolled up tin foil to get some texture, which I learnt from a channel called Nerdforge. If you haven't seen it, you really should. Martina and Hansi are just so talented. So I took their advice and I made this sort of paste. It's kind of like sculptor mold. just using some PVA glue, some sandy soil that I got out of the garden, and some black paint, and that just keeping everything nice together while also giving it a base coat. So now I'm just going to drill a hole for the stand to go in. I actually filmed making how I made this hot glue saddle stand, but when I went to look for the footage it wasn't there, so I don't know whether it was corrupted or if my camera decided to stop recording. I was really disappointed, so I'll make sure to make another one and show you guys how I did it, because it works really well, and especially because it's hot glue, it kind of grips to the doll, so like they're going to be sitting there really nicely. To hide up the glue, I'm just putting these wee little wedges to kind of just surround that and cover the glue, like how you see in some stone buildings. They often have wee little stone bits like this. And now I'm just adding some green paint and also brown, a little bit of white, just to give the stone a little bit of variety. And it looks hardcore now, but like Martina says, trust the process. And you'll see it will look much better after the black paint and dry brushing. Adding a bit of variety to the stone definitely makes it look more realistic. Maybe not quite at this stage, it looks a little bit but we'll see. So after that's dry, I'm going in with some black paint and water to do a wash, and just tapping that with a paper towel just to get in all the crevices and really bring out some of those details. So it looks a little bit like a mess now, but just wait for the dry brushing is like magic. And now we can dry brush in white. So this is just done with this brush. I almost threw it away because it's so just fluffed out, and but it's perfect for dry brushing actually. You just have a little tiny bit of paint, as little paint on your brush as possible, and just lightly dust over the area that you're painting, and it will bring out all the little bits of texture and anything that's raised. And it really just does make everything look better. Now I'm going in with some little bits of static grass that I got from the hobby shop, just putting it in some of the cracks, like weeds growing through the grout. And now I'm just putting some PVA glue over the bits that we put some green paint down, and adding a little bit of the moss. Not real moss, also the flocking that I got from the hobby shop. And don't forget, paint the edges, looks much nicer. I almost forgot. And I got these creepy kitty stickers from a really lovely subscriber, so I'm going to put that on the bottom of the stand, the first time I've ever used them, so It's really cool. It was the first time making something intended to sell. So that was a really exciting moment. And that makes the stand all finished. So now we can put her all together. This is her finished outfit, the overdress. Underskirt. Petticoat. For added floofiness. Made her these little lace glovelets. Her collar that has wire in it, just like the possessed nun, and a little bit of elastic to flick over a bead to keep it fastened. I made a detachable bow out of black lace, and her shoes. Her hair. Habit, also with wire in the band, and her rosary. And she's done. I really hope you liked her and enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed story time, and let me know in the comments below what you thought, if you'd like it as a longer story. Like the video if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye!